People talk about the big tests in a marriage, the things you see coming from a mile away, like financial trouble or arguments about where to spend the holidays. But sometimes the real tests are the ones that sneak up on you. They're quiet, they're strange, and they come in the form of a 22-year-old pool guy with a secret. My story isn't about some dramatic, earth-shattering betrayal. It's about something much weirder, and in the end, a lot funnier. It's the story of how I found out my wife tried to hit on our pool boy and how it ended up making our marriage stronger than ever. It all started, as these things often do, with a dream, specifically the American dream. My wife and I had been married for a couple of years, living in a perfectly fine apartment that was starting to feel like a shoebox, with nice curtains. We were saving every penny, dreaming of a backyard, a grill we didn't have to share with the entire building, and maybe a dog. I was 32 at the time, my wife was 31, and we felt like we were finally ready to plant some real roots. The house hunt was a blur of open houses that smelled like fresh paint and desperation, and online listings with pictures taken at very creative angles. But then we found it. A modest single-family home in a quiet neighborhood. It had a big oak tree in the front yard and enough room in the back for that grill and that future dog. But the real selling point, the feature that made both of our eyes go wide, was in the backyard, the pool. It wasn't an Olympic-sized marvel, but to us, it might as well have been the Bellagio fountains, a 10,000-gallon, in-ground saltwater pool. It was sparkling blue on the day we first saw it, the sun bouncing off the surface. I could immediately picture it summer afternoons floating on inflatable chairs, the sound of sizzling burgers, on the grill friends and family laughing. It was the centerpiece of the entire dream. We put in an offer that same day, and a few months later we were standing in an empty living room, the echo of our own voices bouncing off the walls, holding a set of keys that felt like they weighed 100 pounds. We had done it. We were homeowners. That first year in the house was pure magic. We spent that summer practically living in the water. We learned that a saltwater pool is gentler on your skin, and we felt very fancy telling people that. We threw parties, we had lazy weekends, we felt like we were on a permanent vacation. But as summer faded into fall and we had to close the pool for the season, we learned another lesson. A pool is not just a source of joy, it's a source of relentless, back-breaking work. The next summer, 2 years after we bought the place, the reality of pool ownership hit us hard. I'm 34 at this point, my wife is 33, and we're 4 years into our marriage. We were in that comfortable groove where you can finish each other's sentences, and you know exactly what the other person is thinking just by the way they sigh. Our relationship was solid, built on trust, and a shared, slightly goofy sense of humor, which was a good thing, because that pool was testing our patience. Skimming leaves testing pH levels, shocking the water with chemicals I couldn't pronounce. It was a constant battle. The beautiful blue oasis was starting to look like a full-time job we weren't getting paid for. One particularly frustrating Saturday, after spending 3 hours trying to figure out why the water was a slightly unsettling shade of green. My wife came out with 2 glasses of iced tea, looked at my sweat-drenched face, and said, "You know, for what we're spending on chemicals and test kits, we could probably just hire someone." It was like a light bulb went off. Of course. Professionals exist for a reason, so the search for a pool guy began. The first company we tried sent out a guy who seemed perpetually annoyed to be there. He did the bare minimum and left a bill that made my eyes water. The second guy was flaky, canceling appointments at the last minute. We were about to give up and resign ourselves to a life of amateur chemistry when a neighbor recommended a smaller, local service. The next week, a clean white truck pulled up and out hopped the solution to our problems. He was young, probably just out of college. He introduced himself, shook my hand firmly, and had this incredibly professional but friendly demeanor. He was 22, looked like he spent every spare second at the gym, and had a smile that was just genuine. He wasn't some jaded veteran. He was a kid who was clearly proud of his work and eager to do a good job. He walked over to the pool, took one look, and started rattling off everything that was wrong in a way that was informative, not condescending. He explained the science behind saltwater systems, gave me tips on how to properly run the filter to save on electricity, and promised he could have our green-tinged water looking like a Caribbean postcard by his next visit. We hired him on the spot for weekly maintenance for the rest of the season, and he was true to his word. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, his truck would pull up. He was efficient, tidy, and incredibly thorough. The pool had never looked better. Over the next few weeks, we developed a nice, easy rapport. If I was home, I'd come out and chat with him while he worked. We'd talk about the weather sports, what he was studying in school. He was smart, polite, and had a good head on his shoulders. He was just a good kid. I trusted him. He was our pool technician, and it was a perfectly normal professional relationship. My wife thought he was great, too. She loved how pristine the pool was, and she'd sometimes wave to him from the kitchen window. She'd mention how polite he was, how nice it was to finally have someone reliable. It was all part of the background noise of our perfect summer. The hum of the pool filter, the smell of chlorine, the friendly chat with the pool guy on a Tuesday afternoon. Everything was exactly as it should be. We had our house, our dream backyard, and a happy, stable life. We were comfortable. We were secure. And we had absolutely no idea that this quiet, predictable routine was about to get very, very weird. That summer settled into a rhythm that was as predictable and comforting as the tide. Every Tuesday around 1 p.m, I'd hear the familiar rumble of the technician's white truck pulling up. If I was working from my home office, I'd see him through the window, moving with a kind of quiet efficiency that was just impressive to watch. He'd unspool his hoses, lay out his testing kits, and get to work. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. An hour later, the truck would rumble away and our 10,000-gallon saltwater pool would be left sparkling and ready for another week of blissful use. It was the best money we'd ever spent on the house. This particular Tuesday started like any other. The sun was already beating down by 9 a.m, promising one of those sweltering days that makes you grateful for air conditioning and a body of cold water in the backyard. I had a big presentation to prep for, so I was camped out in my office surrounded by spreadsheets and lukewarm coffee. My wife was enjoying a rare day off, planning to spend it reading by the pool she was now so proud of. The plan was simple. I'd finish my work, she'd get some sun, and we'd grill some burgers for dinner. A perfect ordinary summer day. Around 11, my phone buzzed. It was my boss. A client had a last-minute urgent problem, and they needed an all-hands-on-deck meeting at the main office. Immediately. I let out a heavy sigh, the kind that my wife can interpret from 2 rooms away. She popped her head into my office, already dressed in her swimsuit with a towel over her shoulder. "Trouble in paradise?" she asked with a sympathetic smile. "You have no idea," I grumbled, already closing down my files. "Gotta go into the office. Emergency meeting. Could be the rest of the day." She gave me a little pout. "Oh no, on our perfect pool day." "I know. Sorry, honey. You'll have to hold down the fort." I stood up and gave her a quick kiss. "The pool guy is coming around one, so just let him in the side gate." "Will do," she said, her smile returning. "Go save the world, or whatever it is you do with spreadsheets. I'll be right here working on my tan." I grabbed my keys and headed out. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw her through the living room window grabbing her book and a bottle of water. I felt a pang of jealousy. She was about to have a relaxing afternoon in our little backyard oasis, and I was about to sit in a freezing conference room arguing about quarterly projections. Still, I felt a sense of peace. This was the life we'd built. A good job, a beautiful home, a wife I loved. Everything was right where it was supposed to be. The meeting was exactly as dreadful as I expected a manufactured crisis that wasted 3 hours of a beautiful afternoon. By the time I was finally released, it was nearly 4 o'clock. All I wanted was to kick off my shoes, grab a cold drink, and maybe dip my feet in the pool. I pulled into the driveway. The house looked quiet. I noticed the side gate to the backyard was properly latched, a small detail that made me nod in appreciation. The pool guy was always good about that. I walked in through the garage, dropping my briefcase on the floor. "Honey, I'm home," I called out. In the kitchen, she called back. I walked in to find her chopping vegetables. She was still in her swimsuit, but had thrown a light sundress over it. She looked up and gave me a bright, welcoming smile. "Hey you, how was the fire drill?" she asked. "A complete waste of time," I said. "How was your day? Did you get any reading done?" Oh yeah, she said, not looking up from her chopping. It was lovely. So quiet. The pool is absolutely perfect, by the way. He came and went. Did a great job as always. It was all so normal. We chatted about my pointless meeting and the book she was reading. She seemed completely herself, maybe a little more energetic than usual, but I chalked that up to a relaxing day in the sun. There was nothing in her demeanor that set off a single alarm bell in my head. After dinner, I went out to the backyard. The evening air was warm and the pool lights cast a mesmerizing blue glow across the water. It was pristine. I walked over and dipped my hand in. The salt water felt soft and clean. Our pool guy was worth every penny. I went back inside and found my wife curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Pool looks amazing," I said, sitting down next to her. "Told you," she said, glancing up. "He's so good at his job. Really thorough." "Yeah, he is," I agreed. "Did you talk to him at all today?" It was a casual question, just making conversation. But looking back on it now, her reaction was the first tiny clue. A flicker in her eyes, a hesitation so brief that if you'd blinked, you would have missed it. She put her phone down. Oh yeah, for a minute. I offered him a bottle of water since it was so hot out. He was very polite. "That was nice of you," I said. The conversation moved on. Normally, she might have added a little detail, something she'd learned about him. She collected little details about people, but her summary was clipped, efficient. He was very polite. A statement of fact delivered without any of her usual color. At the time, my brain didn't register it as odd. I was tired and mentally fried from my day. We watched a movie, shared a bowl of ice cream, and went to bed. I fell asleep to the gentle hum of the pool filter wrapped in the comforting blanket of our perfect, stable life. I slept the sound, peaceful sleep of a man who thought he knew everything that was going on in his own home. I couldn't have been more wrong. The next week passed in a blur of work and routine. Life was normal. So normal, in fact, that the tiny, fleeting oddness of my wife's comment completely faded from my memory. It was just a blip, a piece of static in the otherwise clear broadcast of our lives. When the next Tuesday rolled around, I happened to be working from home. I had a mountain of paperwork to get through, and I decided a change of scenery would do me good. I set up my laptop on the patio table, enjoying the warm air and the gentle lapping of the water in the pool. Around 2 o'clock, I heard the familiar rumble of our pool technician's truck pulling up. I saw him through the side gate, a young guy just 22 at the time with a perpetual tan and sun-bleached hair. He was always friendly, always had a cheerful, "Hey, Mr. Mendoza," for me. We'd often chat for a few minutes about the weather or sports before he got to work. It was part of the rhythm of summer, but not this time. He gave me a quick nod and a tight-lipped smile. "Afternoon." He said, his voice quiet. He didn't make eye contact for more than a second before turning his attention to his equipment. He moved with his usual efficiency, testing the water, brushing the sides, but the easygoing energy was gone. The silence was louder than the hum of the pool pump. He was all business, a closed-off professional stranger in a yard where he'd always been a friendly presence. I tried to ignore it at first. Maybe he was just having a bad day. We all have them. But as he worked, the quiet felt heavier, more deliberate. He was actively avoiding looking in my direction. I watched him skim the surface of the water, his movements precise and focused, but his shoulders were tense. This wasn't a bad day, this was something else. This was awkward. My mind started churning. Did I forget to pay an invoice? Was there a problem with the filter he was afraid to tell me about? I ran through a mental checklist, but nothing made sense. Our account was on autopay. The equipment was all new. Finally, as he was packing up his gear to leave, I couldn't take the silence anymore. "Hey, is everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. He froze for a second, his back to me. He slowly turned around, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked like a kid who was about to confess to breaking a window. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Yeah, Mr. Mendoza, everything's fine," he said, but the words were hollow. He was still looking at the ground. "You sure?" I pressed gently. "You just seem a little quiet today. If something's up with the pool or anything else, you can just tell me." He took a deep breath and finally met my eyes. I could see a genuine conflict warring in them. He was clearly a decent kid, and he was in a deeply uncomfortable position. "Look." He started, then stopped. He licked his lips. This is really awkward, and I don't want to cause any trouble. I really like working for you guys." My heart rate kicked up a notch. Now I was worried. "It's all right," I said, trying to sound as reassuring as possible. "Whatever it is, we can figure it out." He nodded, steeling himself. "Okay, when I was here last week, you were at that meeting." "Right," I said. "And, your wife was here." A cold knot started to form in my stomach. I had no idea where this was going, but every possibility my brain was generating was bad. She came out to offer me a water. He continued speaking faster now, like pulling off a Band-Aid, which was nice, but then she sort of started flirting with me, pretty heavily. The world seemed to tilt on its axis for a moment. My brain was trying to connect two completely different puzzle pieces. My wife, flirting, with the 22-year-old pool guy. It didn't compute. We had been married for 4 years at that point. We were happy. We were solid. This just wasn't a thing that happened in our marriage. A dozen questions exploded in my mind, but I stayed silent, letting him finish. He must have seen the shock on my face because he rushed to explain. I didn't know what to do. He set his hands up in a placating gesture. I tried to just be professional and finish my work, but it was uncomfortable. I honestly wasn't sure if I should even say anything. But then I felt weird coming here today, and I figured it was better to be honest with you. He looked genuinely distressed. "I'm really sorry." I just stared at him for a second, processing. The quiet guy, the awkwardness. It all clicked into place. He wasn't mad. He was embarrassed. He wasn't accusing. He was explaining. And through my own swirling confusion, I could see that it took real guts for him to do this. He was risking his job to clear the air. And then he delivered the punchline I never ever saw coming. He must have misinterpreted my stunned silence as anger or suspicion because he added one final crucial piece of information. "And just so it's 100% clear," he said, looking me straight in the eye. "I wasn't interested and I didn't, encourage it. I'm gay." The tension in the air didn't just break, it evaporated. It was like a switch was flipped. The dark, ominous cloud of potential infidelity, of betrayal, of a crisis in my marriage, it all just vanished, replaced by a bizarre, blinding flash of clarity. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The cold knot in my stomach dissolved. I looked at this poor, stressed-out kid standing in my backyard who had been agonizing over this for a week, and I almost laughed. Not at him, but at the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of the entire situation. "Thank you," I said, and the relief in my own voice surprised me. "Seriously, thank you for telling me. I appreciate your honesty more than you know. You did the right thing." He visibly relaxed, a wave of relief washing over his face. "Oh, good. I was so worried." "We're good," I assured him. "Completely. I'll handle it from here." He nodded, gathered the last of his things, and left. I stood there on my patio for a long time, staring at the sparkling blue water of our 10,000-gallon pool, a monument to a problem I never knew I had. That evening, my wife came home from work cheerful as ever. We went through the motions. How was your day? What's for dinner? I let the normal rhythm of our life play out, but the conversation I needed to have was sitting on my chest like a lead weight. After we ate and cleaned up, we sat on the couch. The TV was off. "Hey," I said, turning to face her, "can we talk for a second? It's a little strange." She immediately looked concerned. "Of course. What's wrong?" I decided to ease into it. "The pool guy was here today." "Oh, great," she said, relaxing a bit. "Everything look okay?" "The pool is fine," I said, but he seemed off, really quiet. I asked him if everything was all right. I saw that flicker again, the one I'd missed last week. This time I was looking for it. A brief shadow of panic in her eyes before she carefully composed her features. "Oh," she said, her voice a little too casual. "I wonder what that was about." I took a breath. "Well, he told me what it was about. He told me about the conversation you two had last week." Her face went pale. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and sheer uncut mortification. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. "He told me you flirted with him," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level, not an ounce of accusation in it, just a statement of fact. She finally broke, burying her face in her hands. "Oh my God," she mumbled into her palms. "I am so embarrassed. Felix, I am so sorry. It was stupid. I was just being silly and dumb, and it got away from me. I don't know what I was thinking." I let her sit with it for a moment. I could see she was genuinely ashamed, and in that moment I knew our foundation was still solid. This wasn't a symptom of a deeper problem. It was exactly what she said. It was a moment of stupid, harmless vanity. Then I delivered the final piece of the story. "Well," I said, my voice still calm, "there's one more thing you should probably know. The reason he was so uncomfortable and felt he had to tell me—" I paused, letting the suspense build just a little. "Is because he's gay." Her head snapped up. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly agape. She stared at me, processing the new information. The gears were turning. The flirtatious comments she'd made, the little hair flips, the suggestive compliments. I could see her replaying all of it in her mind, but now through this new, hilariously awkward lens. Her expression shifted from horror to confusion and then to something else. A corner of her mouth twitched. A small sound, a little puff of air escaped her nose. And that's when the dam broke. I felt a smile crack my own face. A chuckle escaped my lips. She saw me smiling, and her little snort turned into a full-on giggle. The sheer ridiculous comedy of the situation washed over us both at the same time. Her trying to seduce a man who was categorically, biologically, and unequivocally not interested. Him politely trying to scrub a pool while fending off the advances of a bored 33-year-old suburban housewife. And me caught in the middle of the most bizarre, low-stakes marital drama in history. We were gone. We were howling. She was laughing so hard she was crying, wiping tears from her eyes as she gasped for air. I was doubled over, my stomach aching. Every time we'd start to calm down, one of us would just say, "The pool guy," and it would set us off all over again. When we finally caught our breath, she leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder, still shaking with laughter. "I am the biggest idiot on the planet," she said, her voice hoarse. "Yeah," I said, wrapping my arm around her, "but you're my idiot." And just like that, it was over. What could have been a secret, a lie, a fight that spiraled into a week of silence and suspicion became a story. It became our story. It was proof that our marriage wasn't so fragile that it couldn't withstand a little awkwardness. It was strong enough to find the humor in our own foolishness. It was a victory not over each other, but over the kind of drama that tears other couples apart. We had faced the absurd, and we had chosen to laugh. And our home, our little oasis with its pristine saltwater pool, felt more perfect and stable than ever before.